In this part of the review, we're going to start with the graphing problems on number 10. Okay, so what they want me to do is they want me to write it in vertex form. So in order to write in vertex form, I must complete the square. In order to complete the square, I have to factor out the number in front of x squared. Now notice I left a space, and then I moved the 7 to the back. So what I did was I put a plus sign here and a minus sign at the back. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 times 3 gives me 12. Then I factor this group in here. Half of 4 is 2. So I get x plus 2 squared. Positive 7 minus 12 is negative 5. And I bring the 3 down with me. So my vertex form is y equals 3 parentheses x plus 2 squared minus 5. Now that means that my vertex is at the opposite of the sign in parentheses, so negative 2 and negative 5. Okay. I know that my domain, because it's a quadratic, is all real numbers. There is no x value that does not work if I were to plug that in. And then the range, well, because this first number is positive, I know it opens up. So my range is all real numbers greater than or equal to the y coordinate, so negative 5. In the second question, in the graphing part, we get negative 2x squared minus 8x minus 6. Now I'm going to factor out a negative 2 from the first two terms. That leaves me with x squared plus 4x and then minus 6. So now I'm going to take half the middle number and then square it. Half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. Okay, so plus inside parentheses, minus outside. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. So that's what I wrote back here. So this is minus negative 8. So I factor this group. Half of 4 is 2. So we get x plus 2 squared. Okay, times negative 2, and then negative 6 minus negative 8 is plus 2. So that's my vertex form. So by looking at this, I know that my vertex is at the opposite of this sign, so it's actually at negative 2, and then up 2. So my vertex is at negative 2, too. The domain, every x value works. So the domain is all real numbers. And because that first number is negative, that means it opens down. So since that top y value is 2 and it goes down from there, my range is y such that y is less than 2. So those are the end of the questions in the graphing section. Now, the next several questions tell you, like, how do you know when to solve via this method? Well, those are questions that are simply just written out. So, if I am given a quadratic equation, I factor when when the coefficient of x squared is 1, and you see the factors easily, meaning the factors that give you that last number. Now for completing the square, I complete the square when x squared coefficient is 1, meaning I prefer to not have a number in front because I don't want to have to factor it out, and the middle number is even. Middle number has to be even no matter what. Okay? And then when do I use quadratic formula? Basically, if the number in front of x squared is anything but 1, I'm thinking quadratic formula. Okay? But not always. Okay? Sometimes when the number in front of x squared is 1, you still have to use quadratic formula. Sometimes you cannot factor it. Okay, number 13 says, when you solve a quadratic equation, what information does that give you about the graph of the quadratic? Well, when you solve, what you're actually finding are the x-intercepts, because that's where it equals 0. Number 14 says, when given a quadratic function in vertex form, what information do you have about the graph? Well, if it's in vertex form, you have a lot of information. Okay? You get the vertex. You get the direction of opening. You get the axis of symmetry. Okay? All just like we talked about in class. Okay. For 15, it says when you have a quadratic function in standard form, what information do you have about the graph? Well, if it's in standard form, what I know is what direction it opens. If the first number is positive, it opens up. If the first number is negative, it opens down. And then I know the y-intercept because it's the last number. Okay, so the next set of questions gives us the focus and directrix, and they want us to find the equation of the quadratic function in vertex form. So, remember that equation is 1 over 4c parentheses x minus h squared plus k. So that's how it's going to look. Now, what I've done is I've already drawn my picture here. My focus is at negative 4 or 5. This is my directrix at y equals 13. And I know my vertex is halfway in between. So I just kind of counted and found the middle position. Okay. So, and thus I know the vertex is at negative 4 and then 9. My C value, okay, is negative 4 because I have to go down 4 from the vertex to the focus. So therefore, when I plug it in, it looks like this. 1 over 4 times negative 4, then times x plus 4 squared. Remember, this is the x-coordinate, so it's the opposite of the sign, then plus 9. So then I just cleaned it up a little bit. I did 4 times negative 4, and that gave me y equals negative 1 over 16, or negative 1/16. That negative sign kind of blends in with the equals. And then x plus 4 squared plus 9. That's number 16. Now number 17 and 18. Number 17, okay, there's my graph. I always start with the graph. Always, always, always. Okay, my focus is at 7, 1. The directrix is at y equals negative 3. So I know the vertex is halfway in the middle. So I could count from here to here. That's 4 spaces. Half of 4 is 2. So start the focus and go down 2. 1, 2. That tells me that my vertex is at 7, negative 1. My C value is positive 2 because I have to go up 2 spaces from the vertex to the focus. So when I plug it into the vertex form, I get 1 over 4 times 2, then times x minus 7 squared. Remember, opposite sign. Then minus 1. So when I clean that up, I get 1 over 8 parentheses x minus 7 squared minus 1. Okay, that's number 17. Number 18, okay, they give us the focus of 0, 0. They give us a directrix of y equals 16. So that means my vertex must be halfway in between. So the vertex is 8 spaces up, because from here all the way up to the top is 16 spaces. Okay, so if that's my focus, that's my vertex, I have to go down 8 to get to the focus. So, because of that, this 8 is actually going to be negative. Okay? As you can see, I made an error, but it's okay. That's why we do this. Okay? You can't be perfect all the time. Can't be difficult enough to be some of the time, let alone all the time. So plug in 1 over 4 times negative 8 times parentheses x minus 0 and then plus 8. Okay, the last question in this section deals with, so we get negative 1 over 32 x squared plus 8. So that's the last set of questions out of that section. So that's the end of this video. You're welcome to go back and pause or restart as necessary.